7-win type teams. I can't wait to let 18 to 22-year-olds emotionally ruin me.
I made a call, to Vegas. I said, look, we actually need the favorite here.
Go on, everyone. It's the best 25 minutes or so of everybody's week. I'm sure Bruce and the Bear back here. I am in Iowa City. Bruce is in LA. Sammy will join us as always. Pretty big weekend of games. It always is when you get that first college football playoff ranking, Bruce, and everybody kind of gets the lay of the land as to where they stand.
Yeah, I think it's an awesome time of year. If you're a college football fan, I think cannot wait to see the game you're at this weekend. Iowa's playing really well, 6-2. We know Kirk Ferentz has done really well in some of those big games in Iowa City, and you're going to get bad weather, which is good weather for a college football fan. Expecting rain, cold, maybe some snow tomorrow, Bear. How about that?
Mix it in a little snow later in the afternoon, maybe second half. You'll see a little mixed stuff. If you're sitting at home, it's certainly the best place to be taking in this game. And I am curious how it plays into Iowa's chances of winning. Like, I don't know if it necessarily helps them or not. I know it might derail a little bit of the Oregon pass game, but the way Dan Lanning has been beaten at Oregon in the 7 games that Oregon has lost, 5 of them have seen an opposing quarterback throw for 315 yards more. And we know that Iowa's not going to do that. You look at Iowa in their last 6 games against ranked opponents, or top 10 opponents rather, been outscored like 215 to 34, and they haven't scored more than 14 points in any of them. It's an Oregon defense that only once this year you've seen the starters allow more than 2 touchdowns in a game, and that was the Indiana game where you had some short fields. So I see a very narrow path for Iowa to pull the upset. Would not surprise me if it's a close, low-scoring game, but Iowa seems like a very popular underdog, and usually when you get a lot of people calling for that outright win with an underdog, it typically doesn't play out that well.
Yeah, I think if I was an Iowa fan, look, Mark Gronowski has not beaten anybody really through the air. I mean, he has 1 touchdown throwing the football in Big Ten play. I mean, it's kind of a crazy stat for a team to be in the top 25 and not be a service academy and be so one-dimensional. But they are running the football a lot better over the past month than they were earlier in the year. And again, if this is a really bad weather game, we know Phil Parker's always got a good defense at Iowa. Cannot wait to see how Dante Moore handles this tough road environment. It's an interesting stat you have about where Dan Lanning's teams seem to have been most susceptible. Iowa's kind of a different animal. They have a really good record in the last handful of games against top 10 opponents who've had to come to Iowa City. So can't wait to see how that one goes.
It's funny you mentioned that, Bruce, because I was thinking when I was coming in last night about the first time I was in Iowa City and then the last time I was in Iowa City. So you mentioned one of those records in Iowa City against top 10 type teams. I can remember being here for that Michigan game, the 14-12 win, I think it was 14-12, 14-13. And I think it was 4 field goals and a safety where they beat Jim Harbaugh's Michigan team that year. I think it was 2016, right? The year then they wound up going to Ohio State later in the year and contrary, whatever. But so I was here for that night. I was here for the Saquon game, which I think was that year as well, or maybe I have it confused. But anyway, I was there for that game. And then the first time I was in Iowa City is probably the warmest memory, the best memory, because it was the same day. It was an Ohio State game, Tim Dwight Iowa team in '96. And it was the same day as Game 6 of the World Series, and between the Yankees and the Braves, the year the Yankees wound up winning the World Series. And I can remember watching it on this little monitor, in our office in the bottom of Carver Hawkeye Arena, watching Girardi with that triple and over Marquise Grissom and beating the Braves to get the World Series. So a lot of good fun memories from my rare trips to Iowa City.
Yeah, for me as a kid from the upstate New York, I always loved the cold, but man, I do remember being a sideline reporter for some Iowa, Minnesota games. and feeling like my face is going to freeze because you're just not really doing much of anything. You're just trying to survive it. And so, but Iowa's always stepped up in that environment. So can't wait to see what you get here. Now, look, if Oregon does win, as we said, the first CFP rankings came out on Tuesday night. You have Ohio State, then Indiana in the top 2 spots. Oregon's a little further down. We feel like unless Iowa gets knocked off here, there's a really good chance we'll get 3 teams from those 3 teams from the Big Ten. Their path looks pretty good. What are the odds you think that we're going to see a 4th team, and who do you think it would be?
I do not think we're going to see a 4th team. I don't think USC will go to Autzen and win. I don't think Michigan will beat Ohio State this year. I don't know if offensively they have the passing. And again, they didn't have the passing game to beat them last year, and somehow they did. So Washington, I'm still not sure how good they really are and how high they can climb. Like if they're 20, whatever they are they going to be able to go from like 21 to 11 with the win over Oregon? I think they're stuck on 3. Some people think they can get 4, but I think more than likely we're headed towards 3. But the way the rankings did come out, it does set up where you got an opportunity for USC, Iowa, and Washington to get a win over a top 10 Oregon team to kind of boost their stature somewhat.
Yeah, I think Washington is the one to watch out of this group. They're 6-2. They are. I think they have a real chance. They have pretty much 3 cupcakes, in conference. What are you going to push back on?
I'm going to push back on tomorrow, on Saturday. I think Wisconsin's a live underdog there. Now, look, I know the Badgers' offense has not been very good, and you're looking at a team that's in 63 drives this year against Power 4 teams. They scored a total of 4 touchdowns. But I think maybe the fact that they don't have this cloud over as Luke Fickell and Chris McIntosh, are they going to be there? Like, I think maybe that's cleared. It might help them. Their defense played pretty well in Eugene a couple of weeks back. Washington struggled on the road, needed a comeback to beat Maryland, couldn't move the ball against Michigan. Granted, Michigan's defense is better, but I'm Wisconsin plus the points here is pretty attractive to me. But
okay,
anyway,
I did not expect to get a little bonus Big Ten subplot there you worked in, but that's why we love this show. I'm still believing in Damon Williams Jr., dynamic quarterback who has played really well. They have one of the best running backs in the country in Jonah Coleman. The defense isn't great, but I think they're going to win those 3 games, and then they're going to have the season finale at Husky Stadium, one of the best rivalries on the West Coast. The Ducks would come in there. And I think if Oregon gets knocked off by Washington would be 10-2. One of those losses was against Ohio State. The other loss was Michigan. That's not a great loss, but it's not like they lost to Purdue. So if they were 10-2 with a win over Oregon, I think they're definitely getting in, but they got to do the heavy lifting to get there.
Right, exactly.
Let's get out of the Big Ten for a minute. We got Texas A&M is rolling. They're sitting there at number 3. They play a Mizzou team that is now with their number 3 quarterback that they're going to have to turn to. You have an 8-0 A&M team, a 6.5-point favorite against number 22 Missouri. Mizzou's had a hard time. I mean, they've been good against the teams they should beat, and they've really had their hands full against the teams that are better, which doesn't seem like a big stretch to expect that. Do you think they can catch maybe A&M coming off the big high of last week's win, or what do you think the mindset is going to be here for the Aggies?
That's the $1 million question, because we've seen in the past, and I can remember college football playoff year back when the playoff was just 4 teams. This was one of the things that I loved looking at, where these teams were ranked. Have these teams handled adversity? Have they been in this spot before? And I remember a year that they were like a 2-touchdown favorite at Mississippi State, and they were 3 or 4 in the initial college football playoff rankings. They went down to Starkville and got blown out. So I think this group is more mentally tough and more unified, and they've proven that they can do it in a big spot on the road. However, the one area that the Aggies seem to struggle is, again, you have some big runs on the ground, and you've got hard. The problem is, on the other side, you've got an inexperienced quarterback inability to throw the ball. Does that allow Matt Elko's team to just kind of load up against the box and say, Hardy, you're not beating us. If you guys can create plays on the outside, by all means, we'll take our chances. So I struggle seeing Missouri pull the outright upset here. I don't know if I would lay it with A&M here, but it is certainly a story right now in the college football playoff rankings, how these teams that haven't necessarily been in the mix before handle all the pressure of seeing where they fall in the pecking order.
Yeah, I cannot wait to see how A&M responds to kind of this, because I think a lot of people are sitting there looking, going, all right, they're rolling, but is this going to be different from A&M than we've seen before? And they right now, you have a bunch of good edge rushers in this game. I think there's a lot of pressure on the quarterbacks. One quarterback now has a lot of experience. The other one is really new. It's his first time in the spotlight in Zollers. We'll see how he handles it. I know the people around Missouri are very excited about him, and he's been impressive so far, but this is a bigger test, as you said, because of Mike Elko's guys.
1 in 19, by the way, since joining the SEC against top 10 SEC teams.
That is a glaring stat, yeah.
So they're going to have to do something they haven't really done ever before. So we'll see.
Yeah, good luck. All right, so now we got also in the SEC, a rivalry that's always been great, but now it's interesting because LSU just fired Brian Kelly. They're going on the road. Frank Wilson takes over. Frank Wilson, longtime running back coach at LSU, been the head coach at McNeese State, been the head coach at UTSA. He shuffled the staff up. The offensive coordinator is out, Joe Sloan, and now Alex Atkins, who had been on staff as a tight ends coach. He's taken over the play calling. From what I've heard, you may see a little more of Michael Van Buren, the former Mississippi State quarterback, who can give them a little dimension in the run game to kind of maybe supplement Garrett Nussmeier, who's been banged up a little bit and has struggled at times behind a pretty shaky offensive line.
That's big.
The spread. Yeah, I know. The spread is 10.5 here. You got the new head coach coming off a bye week in Frank Wilson. Is there a bump that you expect? I mean, that LSU, he's played the hits. He's done a lot of what his old mentor, Ed Ogeron, did whenever the 2 times he had been an interim head coach. He brought out the heartbeat drum that they bang. He's kind of reset the schedule. You think that's going to work? You think it's going to help LSU this weekend?
Well, it can't result any worse than where they've been. Like, I think when you have a coach who apparently was as unpopular as Brian Kelly appears to have been, whether that's fair, unfair, that's certainly the vibe you get around the program, and the shitstorm that's out there with the governor and who's the AD, all of that stuff. Like, I actually think there will be a bump. I think bringing in Frank Wilson, a guy who kind of bleeds the program, I think this is going to result in a little bit of a love. This is still a talented team. Now, the question again, obviously, can they block? Will any quarterback change result in a positive? Can they go on the road and score a lot of points? And the one thing that I will say is the defense, for as good as it has been all year, allowing nearly 100 at home against A&M, that's got to change. It would be LSU or pass for me here, because if you go down and you look at some of these Alabama games, there have been they've been like the pick 6 right before the half against Tennessee. That could have been a massively different result. Should have lost to South Carolina. The game against Georgia, you got the 4th down play where Cash Jones kind of did someone miss a block and doesn't get the 1st down. So there have been a lot of high leverage plays that have gone Alabama's way. So we'll see. It would be dog or pass here for me if you're looking to bet in this game.
Okay. This spread to me on the next game really surprised me a little bit. You got an undefeated BYU team. They're number 8 in the CFP rankings. Bear Bachmeier has played really well. He's actually played well on the road as well as at home. True freshman quarterback. Been even better than I think any BYU fan could have hoped. Now they're going to play Texas Tech, who's right next to them in the CFP rankings. Texas Tech, obviously it's a home game, big atmosphere, going to be there at Jones Stadium. They're a double-digit favorite. It surprised me. I know you're more dialed into this stuff than I am when it comes to the point spreads. Are you surprised the number was quite as big considering BYU is undefeated?
I wasn't. I think there is The team that I think has the biggest discrepancy in terms of actual power rating, computer rating, Vegas odds, line rating, and the college football playoff in the AP poll is BYU. They're down to like 23 in the Sagarin ratings. Think back to this last week, for example, where you had Cincinnati, who, whatever they were, 7-1, and they were a double-digit dog at Utah, who had a lot of people like, oh man, how's Cincinnati that big of a dog? And you went out and you saw what was the final, 45-10, something like that. BYU can't fall. If they fall behind here, this is not going to be like playing a Utah team that's inept at throwing the football on your home field, coming back from that. This is not going to be like playing an injury-riddled Iowa State team. This is not going to be like playing Colorado with an experienced quarterback. Like, this is a completely different animal. This is a legitimate college football playoff team with a really good roster, a potent offense, and a defensive line, and a linebacker in Jacob Rodriguez that gets after you. The line, yes, it is historically odd for a team 8-0 to be a double-digit dog. It's only happened 3 times, other times since 1978. So it's rare, but I think the line is accurate. It would be Texas A&M or nothing for me in this game. I think the question moving forward here with the Big 12 is, are they in position to get 2 or potentially maybe 3 teams in the playoff if you include Utah, who's down there, I think, a lot higher than I thought they were, as being there at 13, considering that they really don't have a win, and they've lost to BYU and kind of lost on their home field to Texas Tech.
Yeah, that surprised me too, Bear. I honestly, I think it speaks to the committee, which, by the way, is chaired by Baylor AD Mac Rhodes. Obviously, Baylor.
Imagine that.
Not saying they're leaning into the Big 12, but much different. There's 3 Big 12 teams higher than the nearest ACC team. Maybe it's not surprising that it should be, but it will surprise me a little bit because of what you just said. Utah doesn't have any good wins, and they got handled pretty easily by Texas Tech at their own place. I don't see a path. I could see 2 teams getting in. I think they have to kind of trade off who wins. You know, like if Texas Tech knocks off BYU here, not knocks them off, but beats them, and then all of a sudden now they both have 1 loss, and then the rematch, I think they both could get in. I don't see a realistic path for Utah to get in. I think it's like, obviously the best they would be able to do is somehow get in the play into the conference title game, be 11-2. I just don't see it. But we'll see. There's a lot of football left to be played. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this little bonus question. You had to have been a little surprised that your alma mater, Miami, was 8 spots behind a team that not only they beat in week 1 in Notre Dame, they have the same record. They're both 2-loss teams. Did you think Miami would be above them, or did you think Miami would certainly not be that far behind them?
I thought Notre Dame would be ranked ahead of Miami just because of the recency bias with how Notre Dame has won 8 in a row since then and how Miami's lost 2 out of the last 3 games. Been coming off that performance. I did not think it would be 8 spots. I think, as a Miami fan, I think you need to see 2 things happen here. I think you need to obviously win out, and that's been the problem in November and December. Under 4-11, I think it is, in November and December under Mario Cristobal. So I think the biggest question I think Miami fans and alums and maybe even the CFP committee has is, like, can Miami win out? Can they beat Pitt? In Pitt, they should beat Syracuse. They should beat NC State. Like, should beat Virginia. Like, if they can go 4-0 and win out and get to 10-2, then I think you bring in that head-to-head conversation with Notre Dame. But the other thing, which might be selective amnesia for some Miami fans, is you got to worry about Louisville. Like, the same argument Miami is making about Notre Dame is the same argument Louisville can make about Miami. We went to Miami, we beat them. We have only 1 loss. Like Louisville has to go ahead of Miami. So, like, if you're a Miami fan, you're either rooting for Louisville to win the ACC and get the auto bid, or root for Louisville to lose twice to make sure you don't wind up both in a a 10-2 type situation where you, in sense, would lose the head-to-head. So while I didn't necessarily agree with 8 spots, I did foresee it. It's funny how we talked a few weeks back about Notre Dame and were they a little underrated? And I think the pendulum has gone the completely opposite direction, where they've gone from being underrated and underappreciated because of the 2 games that they played against 2 top 10 teams, top 5 teams at the time, or right now in terms of Miami and A&M, to now it's like, okay, well, they still really don't have any wins. USC might finish the year unranked. And yeah, you got to give them credit for playing the games, but you do ultimately at some point need to win one of these games.
Yeah, and it certainly didn't help them. Like Boise State lost a couple weeks ago and didn't look good. It's not like, that win doesn't carry much. They're going to play Pitt, but Pitt may end up getting banged around because Pitt has a tough last month of the schedule as well. So we'll see. That's what we love about this sport.
Pitt's amazing. It would have been perfect Pitt to go to Stanford and lose and then come back and win 2 out of 3 against Notre Dame, Miami, and Georgia Tech over their final 3 games of the regular season. That would have been perfect Pat Narduzzi college football. I know we're kind of going off script here and I'm circling back on something from a few minutes ago, but I wanted to go back to LSU and just, what are you hearing about like that job search? Like, is the off the field kind of circus, has that made this job less desirable, more desirable, no change? And what type of coach do we think we're getting here?
It definitely hasn't made it more desirable. I think what I've heard from this now, especially this week, look, we talked about this, I think, a little while ago, last episode, with Sammy P, where I think Lane Kiffin is kind of the belle of the ball right now, was the way I would put it, where Florida, LSU, or stay at Ole Miss, where that's a good job and it's gotten to be a better job in the last 5 years because they figured out the collective there and NIL. His family settled in. It's a good spot for him, and he's one of the rare guys who seems to be, at least in consideration, who's actually proven he can win in the SEC. A lot of other good, you talk about these group of 5 head coaches. I think that's a lesser play for LSU. Now, the name that I've heard a little bit this week is a guy we referenced earlier in this show, and that is Jeff Brom at Louisville. He's a terrific coach. He's shown he can win a lot of big games, both at Purdue, where you have much less, or at Louisville, where it's not exactly a blue blood. But I mean, this guy beats really good teams. He wins a lot of games. He's also got like a tough persona, which I think would play well at LSU. And LSU, quite honestly, could double his salary now at his alma mater. But it is his alma mater, and he and his family, I heard, really love it there. That's the one kind of wild card in this, because I'm not sure, if you're LSU, I mean, you just failed with Brian Kelly. You couldn't even get a top 10 season there in 4 years. And I think that they're unlike a lot of other places where I don't think they're going to be open to looking at a group of 5 guy. Right. I mean, they may have to, like John Sumrall is in the state. He's, I think he's more likely to end up at Auburn than he is at LSU, though. So,
yeah, I've heard that as well. And I can't imagine Florida going the group of 5 route either. Again, after the Billy Napier era as well, they're going to want a bigger name. So it is going to be interesting to see how this coaching search does play out.
All right, Bear, let's get to the walkthrough. Sammy P is raring to go. He always has some good nuggets. We got a 1-loss Virginia team that's playing Wake, which feels like Wake looks like they've been reeling the last few weeks. But Sammy P, you're telling me the Sharps know a little better than I think I do.
Well, I would never say that. I would just insinuate it. Here's what I can tell you, and I know Bear knows this as well. There have been wise guys that have bet Wake +7. There are other wise guys that will lay Virginia at 6.5. I mean, it's how this ecosystem works. Guys bet numbers. Bigger bets at Circa were on the dog at +7. John Murray told Bear that somebody laid 6.5 at Westgate. Guys can bet both sides. Here's what I can tell you, though, from a generality standpoint. There have been shortages. Guys have been betting against the best teams in the ACC for 2 weeks now. Last week, Bear, wise guys bet against Miami, and they bet against Georgia Tech.
That
This
worked out
week,
well.
they're betting against Virginia.
And Virginia is certainly a team that they're kind of like the East Coast version of BYU, where you've got 3 overtime wins, you survive a 2-point conversion, you get a pick 6 last week to get a cover. Like I don't want to use the phony word, because they're clearly a much better team than what they've been. But should they really be a 7-point favorite over anybody?
I think we all have our doubts, but look, the ACC does not get a lot of credit, certainly from you mentioned this earlier, from the CFP committee. You're sitting there with that's the highest they go.
You got 3
number
Big 12 teams
15.
ahead of them.
Three, right? And now, so do you guys think, and I would start with you on this, Bear, that the ACC is a 1-bid league? I mean, last year they got a second because Clemson beat SMU, but it doesn't look that promising if you're an ACC fan now.
It really doesn't. Like the team that's got the best. Could Georgia Tech win out somehow, beat Georgia, not win the ACC title, but have that win over Georgia and still get in? Yeah, they potentially could. Could an 11-1 Louisville that doesn't win the ACC get it? But like non-conference, they really don't have a non-conference win that's like the win over Miami's. That I think they're more than likely a 1 big league. And I know a couple of weeks ago with Sammy, we were talking about on Bear Bets that the ACC to get multiple bids, I think was like minus 190. And that was kind of a play that we liked. And here we are a couple of weeks later, and it's looking like that might be drawn dead.
I did bet it. I don't love it anymore. Bruce, how about Louisville? Almost 4-1 to win the ACC, huh?
You know what? Look, it's not like Miller Moss has been great, but they have good receivers. They have a really good running back. Their defense is better. I talked to some of the Miami coaches, and they thought this was one of the better Louisville defenses they've seen. And Jeff Brom is as good a coach as there is in the ACC, and honestly, he's as good a coach as there probably is in college football. So they're dangerous, and there's that. So, and as Bear
Isaac Brown
talked
out though
about,
for a while, which is a big deal, though, right?
What's that?
Isaac Brown
Yes.
out for a while, which is a huge
Yeah, he is one of the better skill guys in college football, and probably one of the better kept secrets in the ACC. And so that will hurt them. But the backup, ran pretty well last week. I want to say he had like 90 yards. So we'll see how this comes together. A team we talked about in regard to Miami earlier in the show was Notre Dame. They're number 10. They're playing Navy. Navy only has 1 loss. I mean, the schedule seems to get a lot harder now for them. What do the bettors think about the midshipmen and their chances this weekend, Sammy?
Bear, we have sniffed this one out all week long on Bear Bet. Started on Monday. I have the tape, Ryan Bartlett, producing this show. Watch the Notre Dame number go. On Monday's show, the number was 25.5. Here we sit on Friday. We are a half point away from 28, gentlemen. 27.5, all over Vegas, all over the country. And Bear, I do think this touches 28 tomorrow.
I think it will too. I think you look at that Navy defense and how poor they are, certainly through the air. This could be a situation where so much focus on Price and Love running the ball. This could be a huge game for CJ Carr tomorrow.
Sammy P, the team that I thought should have been number 1 in the initial CFP rankings this past week is Indiana. They went to Oregon and handled the Ducks, and they blow out everybody they're supposed to blow out. And now they're going to travel to Happy Valley and play a program that is reeling in Penn State. Do you like the Hoosiers' chances of just basically doing what's been the MO under Kurt Cignetti, which is whoever's butt they're supposed to kick, they kick it?
I lean to the dog. I didn't get there, though. And here's why. Every smart guy that I talk to says, don't do it. Bear, the number 1 bet from ChatGPT, Indiana. The number 1 bet at BetMGM, Indiana. The number 1 bet at DraftKings, Indiana. Everybody's betting Indiana. Doesn't mean it can't win, but This is the number 1 play at multiple sports books. And I texted with Chris Andrews at the South Point in Vegas. I said, Chris, am I dumb for liking Penn State? He said, I made the game 11. I said, oh, so we're betting Penn State? And he said this, So that's how people are treating Penn State. The numbers seem a little high, but I think the issue is, did Penn State quit? Nobody knows.
Yeah, I don't know if they've quit, and I'm just trying to picture the Chrissy face. He goes, and just like the body inflection as he the Penn State guy that he is, by the way. Yeah, it's dog or pass for me in this game. I don't think Penn State's quit. I think maybe the way you play it, if you're looking to play it, is maybe how the game last week in Columbus went. Maybe there is a Penn State first half bet to be had. I mean, they can kind of hang in there defensively for a little bit before ultimately over 4 quarters, their inability to score really weighs in there. Like, I think you do have to watch the injury reports here to see if Surratt, Indiana's wide receiver, plays, and Aiden Fisher, best linebacker, if he plays. I'd watch the news on that. I don't know, Bruce, if you have any insight on injury updates on those two guys.
Yeah, Fisher would be the one I'd be most concerned about there, whether he plays or not. Another little interesting subplot here is you got some guys on Kurt Cignetti's staff who used to coach at Penn State. I feel I'm holding on to Indiana here, where I feel like I'm sticking with whoever they're supposed to blow out, they do. I can see why there's a lot of people who believe in it. I'm believing it. We'll see if we're all wrong. Guys, let's get to the 2-minute drill. There's a lot to cover. Let's go back to the SEC, Mississippi State, Georgia. How is this going to work out for Kirby? Bear?
Well, it's worked out in the past where it's been a W. If you go back over Kirby Smart's career, 26-0 away from home against unranked opponents, 22-0 against unranked SEC teams. Now, granted, 5 of the last 6 times in this instance, they failed to cover it and been in some very, very tight games. And I know, Sammy, we hit on Bear Bets the other day about how Mississippi State seems to be one of those very popular underdog. Mississippi State, Iowa, BYU, UConn, those seem to be 4 underdogs that are getting a lot of play. Mississippi State finally coming off of that long SEC losing streak, getting broken last week against Arkansas. Jeff Levy's team has played some teams well in Stark Vegas this year.
You have more tickets on Mississippi State. They're a popular team. People want to bet them, but those are little bets. The big bets are on Georgia. So more tickets on Mississippi State, more cash on Georgia. Bruce, this number was 7 early in the week. We're at 9.5, and we might get to 10. The money is talking, and the money is backing Georgia.
Yeah, I feel like Georgia's starting to wake up a little bit. They've sputtered around with some teams and kind of gotten to the finish line. But, you know, on one hand, I'm a little skeptical of, I don't want to say the Mississippi State offense, but Blake Shapen's been in a lot of close games. Sometimes it goes the wrong way on him. That's kind of how I feel with this one with Georgia. And then I feel like Georgia kind of pulls away. But you never know what can happen in the SEC. And maybe Jeff Levy's team now has some confidence and to get over the top, and maybe they're going to feel themselves. I don't know.
You look at the games that Georgia's been away from home this year. Double-digit comeback in the second half against Tennessee. Comeback last week against Florida. Double-digit comeback from at Auburn. Every game away from home for the Bulldogs this year has been a Maalox masher, as one of my former colleagues at ESPN like to say. So I don't know what leads you to believe that this one might be very much different.
The other game that's kind of intriguing to me is Auburn. They just fired Hugh Freeze. You can go back to the golf course now, and they promote DJ Durkin as the interim. Remember the former Maryland head coach? He's been the defensive coordinator there. They go to Vandy, play a team with legit still CFP hopes. We talked a little bit before you came on, Sammy P, about the new coach kind of maybe boost that could happen at LSU. Do you think it could happen at Auburn?
Thanks to our friend Tim Murray at VEASAN. He did all the legwork on this. There have been 7 coaches fired this year, as we know. The teams that made those decisions to change coaches are 6-1 ATS the following game. Now, that's not a big sample size, but 7 games, 6 covers. We're looking at Auburn and we're looking at LSU. Those teams fit the system.
And I am on Auburn this week. Look, it's a team that hasn't allowed more than 24 points all year long, and somehow they're 4-5. They've lost games in which they've allowed 10 points and 16 points. The quarterback position has been an abomination, But I think this defense will travel. I think the fact that DJ Durkin has been a head coach before and that defense has played well for him this year, I think that's going to travel. I think they're going to give Vandy all that the Commodores can handle. I mean, look, as much as we love Vandy this year, the couple of SEC wins that they have in the last month or so, touchdown win against Missouri at home, touchdown win against LSU, and both were games that easily could have gone the other way. So, asking them to cover 6.5 against a really good defense when we still know that Vandy's very limited in the passing game, I like Auburn quite a bit this week.
One other point on the Auburn piece, Bear, just to tie up what you're saying as well, is I talked to somebody on the staff the day they fired Freeze, and this person made a point about how a lot of people inside the program feel like Freeze really screwed up the quarterback situation there by riding Jackson Arnold as far as he did. Felt like some of the guys behind him could have given him a spark. Freeze wasn't open to doing that. Well, now we got a new quarterback in there. We're probably going to have a new offensive look from the Tigers. We'll see if they get that new coach bump. As Sammy P said, the sample size is small, but it ain't that small.
No, not that small, and certainly with a team that's been keeping their team in games all year, would not surprise me to see Auburn get the road win on Saturday. Appreciate it, guys. As always, appreciate everyone out there for watching, listening, wherever you get your podcast, YouTube, Apple, Spotify. Rate, review, subscribe, interact with us throughout the week as well. And try and get back to you. For Sammy, for Bruce, I'm Bear. Remember, less you bet, the more you lose when you win.